Hi, I'm Angela Wolf. I'm a fashion designer and online instructor. In the 1940s, because of the war, there was a strong military influence in fashion, and particularly the Ike jacket, which is where I took a few of these things, mixed it up, and made my own modern version. Which here I have the jacket. The buttonholes are all on an angle. They're fake buttonholes, meaning that they're not opened. I want it simply for decoration. I trimmed the jacket a little bit shorter so it would hang open like this. We have the mandarin collar, an epaulette in the shoulder, which actually they would stick their gloves in there, or if you were in the marching band, you probably remember that too. It's a great place for gloves. I would probably put a tissue. Here we have the sleeves. I just did a vented sleeve, again with the angles here with the buttonholes. So let's kind of look at how we can add this to any jacket. Here's my epaulette pattern. Now, I'm going to have this online for you, so you can copy this exact one, but you could do this yourself. All this is, I'll lay it on top of here so you can kind of see. It's 1 inch in the center with 2 very narrow seam allowances. Why a narrow seam allowance? Because once you start putting this together, if it's too thick, you're not going to be able to turn it inside out. The length of this needs to run the same as the shoulder length. This will go into your seam where your sleeve is. So mine are a little bit shorter than this. So what I usually do is cut them longer, sew them together, and then cut it off. This part right here will go to the tip of your shoulder, the inside shoulder. And then here's my buttonhole. So that's the simple pattern. And if you're lazy, just go download it off the computer and print it off. So here we have this. And now what I've done is I've cut each one of these out. I've made them a little bit shorter. And before I cut these out, this is fusible interfacing on the back. It just gives it a little bit more stability. And then we're also going to add a buttonhole on here, which you're going to need that interfacing so it doesn't fray. Here is another set. I have stitching right here on each side. That's right along the seam allowance. And you can see that's just barely an eighth, a little over an eighth of a seam allowance. That's it. Why did I do that? Because can you imagine if you sewed this together like a big tube, you would never get this right side out unless your fingers were so tiny. So this will just save you a lot of hassle later. So here's another set. Here's my top stitching, and what I've done is I've pressed this under. I use the tailor's clapper when pressing this, which has made it almost permanent. So let's go sew these together, and I'll show you a little trick. So take both pieces, right side together, and put a pin right down the center, going right to that point. And if you need to, put one more back here just to make sure that your seams are matching up. Now I'm going to use a Sharpie so you can see this, but you'd want to use chalk or something that would not go through, bleed through your fabric. If you recognize this, on my pattern I had a line just like this. That shows me I want both of these sides to be exactly the same. Sometimes when you stitch a curve or a triangle, one side is angled a little bit different. So again, use a fabric pen, not a Sharpie, but this will just help me to see where to stop my stitches. So I'm going to start by stitching right on this line here. If you have access to the laser light, go ahead and use that because it really helps to line up your stitching to be perfect, and then just stitch away. Don't use too short of a stitch length and don't use too long. I know that's tricky. It depends on the thickness of your fabric. I'm using a 2.5 right here. And I'm going to stitch right down to that blue line, right there. Turn your fabric right down again to the blue line. If it's not matching up perfectly, then just adjust it just a little bit. And again, okay, here's the side that we've pressed. Open this up just a little bit. And again, back to the blue. There we go. One more, and then down. Now I'm only going to stitch this side down just a little bit. Move my laser light over so it matches. Okay, the stitching wasn't perfect. If I was doing this at home, I would be a little bit more particular about that, but you're going to get the idea here. So here is my piece, and just flip it to the inside. One thing here I want to do first. Trim this just straight across like that. If you have any extra seam allowance, don't trim too close, but just get rid of that. You don't want all that bulk inside, which is why we used a smaller seam allowance in the first place. And I just put my finger there and flip this through. So if you have a pair of tweezers, these scissors work fine. You're just going to want to get that kind of out. And you can get to each point and give this a really good pressing. All right, so here is my point. I'm going to start with the closed side, the side that we've stitched. Give it a good pressing, a little steam. Use the clapper. All right. And then the side that we've already pressed, just give it one more pressing. Let's go back over here and see. Okay, so now this side is a little bit shorter, so I would even that out, but you can actually use your finger to kind of move this around a little bit and keep moving it around and pressing it until it's perfect. Remember, you're going to have a buttonhole here and a button. So if it's not completely perfect at the end, don't worry. So that's how easy that part is. I'll show you how to do the buttonholes in just a few minutes. Let's look at the pocket. This pocket has a little opening here. Now I didn't attach it to the jacket because I really wanted to show you something. A pocket can be any size. It depends what size your jacket is. This, if it was smaller, could be a breast pocket. It could be on an angle. It could be on the side, wherever you want it, but really take into consideration the size of your jacket. So let me quickly show you how to do this jacket. A little opening there. Here's the pattern. I took this pattern, folded it in half, which you see here. I traced one half to this side. You can see how that matches up. And the other half over here. And then I added 2.5 inches from here to here. You can add whatever you want to. The idea is once this is closed, you have a little opening because you're going to actually stitch here and here. So here we have, this is my pattern pieces, it's my denim. Fusible interfacing on the back with the lining. First, you stitch your fabric and do a stitching right along here. An understitching is what that's called. Why do you do that? Because when you fold this to the back, it keeps the lining from popping out, and look at how much extra fabric. You would trim off that lining so it's completely even with both. Then you won't have any peeping out. I've already stitched this, flipped it inside out, and left this little opening here. That's how you get in and out, and I would just press that closed. And then the simple way to make this pocket is fold this in half, match it up with your pattern, and I would stitch from here to here and here to here, about 1 inch. So you end up with that little opening. The lining is completely hidden to the back side, and you could add a flap or another pocket, whatever you want. That's how easy it is to add one of those really fun pockets. Now let's look quickly at these buttonholes. Here's a piece of fabric. We're going to pretend this is the front of the jacket. All of my buttons are on an angle. So consider the size of the buttons you're using. This is the size I have on the sleeve. This is the size I have on the jacket. So just keep that in mind. So what I have is every 2 inches, I have a buttonhole. So there's 2 inches. I think the ruler's upside down, but you're getting the fact that it's 2 inches. So that's how I usually go through and mark my buttonholes. Then you want to mark from the center front. I usually go, it depends on the buttons and the styling, but let's just go 1/2 inch in from the very edge of the jacket. Now I'm using chalk. This chalk brushes off, so it's safe on almost every fabric. It's a clay chalk, not a wax chalk. There's a big difference. All right, so make these lines just a little bit longer. Now you're going to do this all the way down. I'm just going to do the top 3 now because I think you're getting the idea. Okay, now here we have whatever angle you want. What I'm going to do is mark another line on the outside, 1.5 inches. I'm going 1.5 inches over from this line. Looks like a grid. I know. Now this is how easy this is. All you have to do is line up one corner to the other. Again, you're going to do this all the way up your jacket. I'm narrowing this down to just a couple. See? I line up this corner and this corner with the ruler. So these are going to be my buttonholes. On the back side, if this was a real jacket, you'd have interfacing on both sides. Look at how stretchy this fabric really is. but the interfacing helps that. So let's sew a quick buttonhole. So go ahead and choose whichever buttonhole you want. This machine has quite a few, and so I'm picking a keyhole buttonhole. Again, I'm not opening it. And again, I have to put on a button. This is a buttonhole foot. Now the thing here is, usually you'd put a button back here, and that would tell the machine how long to make every buttonhole, which is why they're all the same. I'm just gonna make mine any length because I'm not actually opening it. So I'm gonna put this on. And there's one more thing on this particular machine. You have to put this lower, and it goes right between these 2 points. So that's how the machine knows, okay, we're done, we're gonna stop. That's as long as the buttonhole is. I remember one of my first jackets, well actually I should say the first quite a few years I sewed, I refused to make a buttonhole because they all turned out terrible. So I'm gonna put my needle, you can't really see in there, but I'm gonna put my needle right at that point, because I will know on every single buttonhole my needle's going right into that point. And then I'm going to lower this and just start stitching. Now I can actually see my chalk line in between this area here, so I know that I'm even. If you start on one side of the chalk line or the other, just make sure you do the same thing all the way down. Look at how fast I'm stitching this. The keyhole is perfect. Again, I'm using a contrasting thread so you can see what's going on here. So here we have a keyhole button. Why is it a keyhole? Because there's a little circle down here. Similar to jeans, if you cut that open, it would leave room for the shank of the button. We're going to close ours, and I'm going to do this on every single one. But because I have these chalk lines to follow, all of these buttonholes are going to match perfectly. So I've given you 3 ideas to take a 1940s military style jacket and make it modern.